Imagine for a moment that the greatest miracles ever witnessed by humanity were not lost to time but intentionally erased. Think deeply about this idea. Not forgotten through neglect, not distorted by innocent mistakes, but systematically removed, censored, burned, rewritten, and buried under layers of acceptable history. Imagine that what you were taught in school is not a lie, but an incomplete truth, carefully shaped to exclude everything that could awaken something powerful inside you. What if the true story of humanity includes wonders so profound that, if known, they would forever change how you see yourself and the universe? Think about how often you were told that miracles belong only to myths, fairy tales, or blind faith. Imagine if ancient people did not see miracles as violations of natural law, but as expressions of laws that modern humanity has forgotten. Imagine civilizations that understood consciousness as a force, thought as a creative power, and the human being as a bridge between the material and the divine. What if levitation, spontaneous healing, prophecy, and direct communication with higher realms were once studied, practiced, and recorded, before being labeled dangerous and removed from official memory? In this video, you will explore the hidden side of history, the side that was never meant to survive. You will uncover why entire libraries vanished, why sacred knowledge was declared heresy, and why the miraculous was slowly replaced by rigid dogma and material explanations. You will begin to notice a repeating pattern. Whenever humanity gets too close to understanding its true potential, something intervenes to reset the narrative. And toward the end of this journey, you will discover the most powerful revelation of all, one that does not belong to the past, but to you, in this very moment. Before we go further, if you feel drawn to these mysteries, support this channel. Subscribe, leave a like, share this video with those who question reality, and comment with your thoughts. What do you believe has been hidden from humanity? What truths do you sense were removed from our collective memory? What we are about to uncover has the potential to transform how you understand life, consciousness, and existence itself. To understand what was removed, we must first understand how ancient civilizations perceived reality. In ancient Egypt, the priesthood of the mystery schools taught that the universe was alive, intelligent, and responsive to consciousness. Healing was not merely physical but energetic and spiritual. Records describe the use of sound, light, geometry, and focused intention to restore harmony within the body and soul. Scholars such as James Henry Breasted noted that Egyptian spiritual science was far more advanced than later interpretations allowed. What modern historians often describe as symbolism may have been precise knowledge encoded to survive suppression. The Hermetic teachings, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, formed the philosophical backbone of much ancient wisdom. These teachings spoke of universal principles governing all existence, including mental causation and correspondence. According to Hermetic philosophy, the mind shapes reality, and what happens on one level of existence reflects on another. When these laws were understood, what appeared miraculous became a natural outcome of alignment with universal order. Think about how threatening this idea is to any system built on external authority. A human who understands these principles no longer needs permission to access power. In ancient India, sacred texts such as the Upanishads and the Yoga Sutras described siddhis, extraordinary abilities arising from mastery of consciousness. These were not presented as supernatural gifts, but as natural byproducts of spiritual discipline. Historian and philosopher Mircea Eliade documented how descriptions of these abilities remained consistent across centuries and regions, suggesting a shared experiential foundation rather than myth. Yet, over time, these accounts were dismissed as exaggerations or allegories, stripped of their literal meaning to fit a more controlled worldview. Ancient Greece offers another striking example. Philosophers such as Pythagoras were said to influence matter through sound and number, heal illness through harmonic resonance, and demonstrate knowledge that bordered on the miraculous. Plato himself hinted that true knowledge was dangerous in the wrong hands, requiring careful transmission. Later, historians, uncomfortable with these implications, reinterpreted such accounts as symbolic storytelling rather than lived reality. But ask yourself this: why do so many independent cultures describe similar abilities using different languages and symbols? As organized institutions gained power, especially during the early centuries of religious consolidation, the miraculous shifted from being a universal human potential to a controlled exception. Only selected figures were allowed to perform wonders, and even then only under strict interpretation. Texts that suggested ordinary humans could access divine power directly were condemned. Councils were convened to decide which writings were acceptable and which were dangerous. Entire Gospels, scrolls, and teachings disappeared. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria stands as a symbol of this loss, a place where science, spirituality, and miracle once coexisted openly. Ask yourself why so much effort was invested in removing these ideas. Why burn texts, silence mystics, and label direct spiritual experience as heresy? Could it be that the greatest miracle ever removed from history is not an event, but a truth about you? In the next part, we will go deeper into how these removals reshaped human consciousness and why the world you live in today is built upon what was deliberately taken away. Imagine waking up in a world where the miraculous has been quietly replaced by obedience, where wonder has been traded for certainty, and where the mystery of existence has been reduced to what can be measured, labeled, and controlled. This did not happen by accident. It was the result of centuries of deliberate decisions that reshaped not only history, but the human mind itself. To understand the hidden miracles removed from history, we must now look at what replaced them and why that replacement was so effective. As spiritual authority became centralized, direct experience of the divine was gradually discouraged. Instead of inner knowing, humanity was taught dependence. Instead of personal revelation, people were offered doctrine. Miracles were no longer something that emerged naturally from alignment with universal principles, but rare events reserved for distant saints, prophets, or figures placed far above ordinary humanity. This subtle shift changed everything. It planted the idea that power exists outside of you, that truth must be granted, and that the sacred is unreachable without permission. Throughout the Middle Ages, countless mystics described experiences that echoed ancient miracle traditions. Hildegard of Bingen spoke of divine visions and healing through sound and light. Meister Eckhart taught that the divine spark lives within every soul, accessible through inner silence. Yet many of these voices were censored, misunderstood, or posthumously reinterpreted to remove their radical implications. Their writings survived only because they were carefully framed in language acceptable to authority. Ask yourself how many others were silenced completely, their experiences erased because they threatened the established order. The removal of miracles was not only religious, but philosophical. With the rise of strict materialism, reality was redefined as something separate from consciousness. René Descartes divided mind and matter, creating a worldview where inner experience was secondary, unreliable, or irrelevant. While this framework allowed for incredible technological advancement, it came at a cost. The inner sciences of consciousness, long associated with miraculous transformation, were dismissed as superstition. What could not be quantified was excluded from truth. Think about how this shift affects you today. From a young age, you were likely taught to distrust intuition, imagination, and inner knowing. You were encouraged to look outward for validation, solutions, and meaning. Yet ancient teachings across cultures insist that the greatest miracles occur within, before they ever manifest without. Carl Jung later echoed this idea, stating that modern humanity suffers not from lack of knowledge, but from loss of meaning. When the miraculous inner world is denied, the soul becomes restless, disconnected, and hungry. Even science, when examined honestly, begins to circle back to what was removed. Quantum physics reveals a universe deeply intertwined with observation and consciousness. Researchers like Max Planck acknowledge that matter itself may arise from a conscious field. Yet, these ideas remain largely separated from everyday understanding, kept within academic boundaries. Why? Because if consciousness shapes reality, then the ancient miracle traditions were not primitive myths, but early explorations of a profound truth modern humanity is only beginning to rediscover. Consider how often similar stories appear across cultures that never contacted one another. Accounts of spontaneous healing, visions of light, near-death experiences, and transformative awakenings repeat with striking consistency. Anthropologist Joseph Campbell observed that myth is the language through which eternal truths are transmitted when direct expression becomes dangerous. Perhaps what we call myth today is simply truth spoken in disguise, preserved beneath layers of symbolism until humanity is ready to remember. The removal of miracles also served another purpose: fear. When people believe the universe is indifferent and meaningless, they become easier to control. But when people know that consciousness matters, that intention has power, and that transformation is possible, fear loses its grip. This is why the most dangerous miracle of all was never fire from the sky or water turned into wine, but the realization that the divine operates through you. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what if the reason these miracles were removed from history is because they point to something authorities could never control? What if remembering them is not about nostalgia, but about reclaiming a forgotten aspect of your own nature? In the next part, we will explore how these hidden miracles still surface today, despite centuries of suppression, and how they quietly shape the lives of those who dare to look beyond the visible. There is a reason these hidden miracles never disappeared completely. No matter how many texts were destroyed, how many teachings were banned, or how deeply materialism reshaped human thought, the miraculous continued to surface quietly, persistently, and often in places where authority was weakest. Truth has a way of leaking through the cracks. What was removed from history did not vanish, it went underground, preserved through experience rather than doctrine. Throughout the centuries, individuals across the world continued to report encounters that defied accepted explanations. Spontaneous healings occurred without medical intervention. Ordinary people experienced moments of profound clarity where time seemed to stop and reality felt alive, intelligent, and responsive. Saints, shamans, monks, and mystics described encounters with light, voices of wisdom, and states of unity that transformed their lives forever. These experiences were often dismissed, pathologized, or reduced to psychological anomalies, yet their impact on those who lived them was undeniable. William James, one of the founders of modern psychology, took these experiences seriously. He argued that mystical states, regardless of their cause, produced lasting positive transformations in perception, ethics, and meaning. He suggested that human consciousness operates on far more levels than ordinary awareness reveals. This aligns perfectly with ancient teachings that described miracles as shifts in consciousness rather than violations of nature. When awareness changes, reality appears to change with it. Carl Jung went even further. He observed that humanity carries a collective unconscious, filled with symbols, archetypes, and forgotten knowledge. According to Jung, when societies repress essential truths, those truths return through dreams, visions, and synchronicities. Could it be that the miracles removed from history now return through personal experience instead of public record? Jung himself experienced events he struggled to explain rationally, moments where inner images corresponded precisely with outer reality. Even modern neuroscience hints at this hidden dimension. Studies on meditation, prayer, and altered states of consciousness show measurable changes in brain activity that correlate with deep feelings of unity, compassion, and insight. People undergoing these states often report experiences nearly identical to those described in ancient mystical texts. Different language, same essence, different era, same miracle. This consistency suggests that these experiences are not cultural inventions, but intrinsic possibilities of the human mind. Near-death experiences offer another striking example. Across cultures and belief systems, individuals who come close to death report similar phenomena: tunnels of light, encounters with loving presences, panoramic life reviews, and an overwhelming sense of meaning. Researchers like Raymond Moody documented these patterns extensively. Many who return describe losing their fear of death and developing a deep sense of purpose. If these accounts were found in ancient manuscripts, they would likely be labeled miracles. Today they are studied cautiously, often stripped of their spiritual implications. Why does this matter to you? Because these hidden miracles suggest that the extraordinary is not reserved for history or legend. It is woven into human consciousness itself. The suppression of miracles trained humanity to look outward for proof, authority, and validation. But the persistence of these experiences points inward. It suggests that the doorway to the miraculous was never truly closed, only forgotten. Ask yourself honestly, how often have you felt moments that defied explanation, a sudden insight that changed your path, a coincidence too meaningful to dismiss, a deep sense of connection that felt more real than ordinary life? What if these moments are echoes of the same miracles history tried to erase? What if remembering them is not about believing in the past, but awakening in the present? In the final part, we will bring all of this together. You will discover the most powerful miracle of all, the one that history could never fully remove because it lives within you. This last revelation will change how you understand yourself, reality, and the role you play in the unfolding of the universe. What history could never fully remove is not a miracle recorded in stone or ink, but a living truth encoded within human consciousness itself. Empires rise and fall, doctrines change, texts burn, but awareness remains. This is the final and most powerful miracle of all, the one quietly hinted at across every tradition, philosophy, and hidden teaching. The realization that the source of the miraculous was never external. It was always you. When ancient texts spoke of divine power, they were not pointing to distant gods, but to an inner capacity awakened through alignment, discipline, and understanding. The miracles attributed to sages, prophets, and enlightened beings were not meant to elevate them above humanity, but to reveal what humanity could become. Over time, this message was inverted. Figures were placed on unreachable pedestals, and their actions were reframed as unique exceptions rather than demonstrations of universal principles. This distortion ensured reverence without imitation. The Hermetic principle that all is mind was not a poetic metaphor. It was a direct statement about reality. Consciousness is not a byproduct of matter. Matter is an expression within consciousness. Modern thinkers such as David Bohm propose that reality unfolds from an implicate order, a deeper level where everything is connected. This idea mirrors ancient teachings that described reality as a unified field responsive to awareness. When this is understood, the miraculous ceases to be extraordinary. It becomes inevitable. This is why the final miracle was the most dangerous one to remove from history. A human who realizes their inner authority no longer needs external permission to seek truth, meaning, or transformation. Fear loses its power. Manipulation becomes visible. Life is no longer something that happens to you, but something that unfolds through you. Systems built on control cannot survive a population that understands this. The removal of miracles trained humanity to doubt itself, to believe that intuition is unreliable, that inner experiences are meaningless, that imagination is childish. Yet every major transformation in history began with an inner vision before it manifested outwardly. Every awakening, every discovery, every leap forward was first a miracle of consciousness. When you reconnect with this truth, you are not rejecting science or reason. You are completing them. Ask yourself now, honestly and without fear, what would change in your life if you trusted your inner knowing, if you treated consciousness not as an accident, but as the foundation of reality, if you understood that meaning is not assigned by the world, but generated from within? This is the question history tried to silence, because once asked sincerely, it cannot be undone. The hidden miracles removed from history were not removed because they were false, but because they were reminders. Reminders that humanity is more than obedient, more than mechanical, more than small. They pointed toward a reality where transformation is possible, where suffering is not the final word, and where awareness itself is sacred. As you reflect on everything explored in this journey, understand this. Remembering is an act of rebellion against forgetfulness. Awakening is not acquiring something new, but reclaiming what was always yours. The final miracle is not waiting in the past or promised in the future. It unfolds now in your ability to see differently, to question deeply, and to recognize yourself as part of the living mystery of existence. History may have removed the record, but it could never erase the truth, because the truth was never written only in books. It was written in you. Take a final moment to sit with everything that has been revealed, not as information, but as an inner echo. The hidden miracles removed from history were never meant to be worshipped as distant wonders, but remembered as invitations. Invitations to see beyond appearances, to question inherited narratives, and to reclaim a deeper relationship with reality itself. What was taken from the past was not only knowledge, but confidence in the inner dimension of being. When you realize this, history stops being a closed book and becomes a living mirror. The past no longer tells you what is possible. It reminds you of what was once known. And that knowing is returning quietly, through those who feel that life must be more than repetition, fear, and limitation. Through those who sense that meaning is not imposed from outside, but awakened from within. Carry this awareness with you. Let it influence how you perceive coincidence, intuition, and moments of deep clarity. These are not accidents, they are reminders. The miraculous was never destroyed, only disguised, waiting for those willing to look beyond what they were told and listen to what they have always felt. And perhaps that is the greatest truth of all. History did not lose the miracles. Humanity forgot how to recognize them. Thanks for looking.